Hold on, everyone. Just a second. I'll be right with you. Bear with me for just a moment. There. That's better. My name is Corey Gilmore, and usually I do technology reviews. You see, as a person with cerebral palsy, I have an interest in technology that can make me more independent. But that interest was originally sparked by a science fiction. So shows like Star Trek, but my very, very favorite show in the whole world, bar none, is Doctor Who. And if you've been watching Doctor Who since 2005, good for you. I have been watching Doctor Who since I was 5 years old, sitting on my father's knee. And at that time, we had doctors like John Pertwee, Tom Baker, Peter Davison, and all the other classic doctors, going all the way back to William Hartnell. So while I watched the modern series, Doctor Who is really 60 years old. And all that history builds on each other. So when I watch Doctor Who, I watch it very differently than some people. That's not to discredit anybody or to say you're not a fan, because I'm not about that. There's enough places on the internet where people can tear each other down. But my view as a longtime fan is that there's room for everybody. And I know that the Jodie Whittaker era has not been a favorite for everybody. And that's okay. That's totally okay. And I can see why. Because um, you know, for one thing, the number of episodes has been cut every year. And so it happened so sporadically that no one really got to know this doctor, right? Because of COVID and because of all those restrictions. It's been very difficult to know this doctor. But one thing I will tell you is that as a longtime Whovian, I want a doctor that's full of joy. And Jodie Whittaker's doctor was that. I don't like a doctor that's all angsty and am I a good man and am I good, and post traumatic stress disorder. I have post traumatic stress disorder. I don't want that in my doctor. Okay, a little bit's okay. After that, you really need to get therapy and move on in the story, because it gets old. It gets old. So, for instance, I love Series 9 of the modern series. I thought that was excellent. But I did not love Series 8, because Series 8 was when Peter Capaldi was being sort of all first doctorish and disliking everyone and asking questions like, I don't know if I'm a good man. I've lived for 2,000 years and I can't figure out if I'm a good man. Well, let me tell you that after 2,000 years, if you don't know, you better figure it out pretty quick because I'm getting bored of that. Okay? So, Series 9 was much more about traditional Doctor Who. It was mostly two parters, it was the Doctor saving the world. Part of the problem with Series 8 was that it wasn't really Doctor Who, it was Clara Who, right? And I like Clara, okay? Excellent companion, excellent companion, but I do not watch the show because it's about Clara. I watch the show because it's about a man called the Doctor whose job it is to make things better as he or she travels, okay? I just I'm sorry. It's very difficult for me to and you could say, well, he made Clara better, and that's true. He did. He made Clara better. He just like he made Ace better, like he made Joe Grant better. You know, he makes people better. That's the success of a good companion. Okay, you know that's the but if the show becomes totally about them and not about the character for whom it is named, then you have a different show. And I don't have a problem with that. I would love to see, for instance, a unit spinoff because I think there's some excellent unit characters. Brigadier Bambera, for instance. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, um, it's a classic story called Battlefield, which features Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart being called back to UNIT to help the Seventh Doctor do something. And the brigadier that's in charge of UNIT is named Brigadier Winifred Bambera. Excellent character. I want to see more of that. Okay. But that's not Doctor Who. Doctor Who is about the Doctor. And so when the Doctor doesn't know whether the Doctor's watching, it's really hard for me. So I had a big problem with Series 8. So when people say, well, Jodie's not my doctor because the stories haven't been great. Well, for me, let me tell you just how I feel about this because so I will say that the specials have all been pretty good. Pretty good. Okay. They've all been really good. Um, Legend of the Sea Devils was a little bit of a mess, but I think that had to do with editing, not story, okay? I think that's the problem there. Um, but I do feel that some of the stories in Series 11 were weak. They were excellent ideas. I just don't think they were successfully brought to a good conclusion. For instance, The story of Rosa. Okay. Love the idea of this story. First of all, we haven't had a proper historical in Doctor Who in I don't know how long. Okay. We used to do this in the classic series all the time because the point of the series was to target it towards school age children in the UK so they could learn about history and science. So we would go back and forth between, you know, the historical stories and the scientific stories. The science fiction stories would always have some some scientific thing that they could use to defeat the enemy. Okay. And they would explain that as science. That's how the series started. Now obviously it moved on from that. But we haven't had a proper historical story in decades in Doctor Who. So when I heard, for instance, that they were going to do Rosa Parks, I was like, this is good because they don't teach this in school anymore. Excellent idea. And I liked that there was a renegade, kind of time agent involved who wanted to avert history. I thought that was cool. Where I thought it messed up though was I wanted that character to be the time meddler, right? Which is a character from the first Doctor story called the Time Meddler, who was another renegade Time Lord who wanted to avert various points in history just because. Okay. And I really thought, oh, what a great idea. This could be the time meddler. But my biggest problem with that story is when Ryan says, oh, I reversed the polarity of this thing. Like, no, you didn't, Ryan. 5 minutes ago, you couldn't ride a bike, and yet you just became a companion of the Doctor, and you are not the Doctor. I watched this show because it is called Doctor Who, not Ryan Who. Okay? Just want to point this out. It's not something you have earned the right to know how to do at this point. Same with arachnids in the UK. Giant spiders in Doctor Who. If you know your history, this is a good idea because the third Doctor was um, forced to regenerate after encountering giant spiders on Metebelis 3. Okay? So that's where all the Matt Smith references to Metebelis 3 come from. They're referring to Planet of the Spiders, which is the third Doctor story. So I was excited. Arachnids in the UK, or we're gonna deal with giant spiders coming back from Metebelis 3. No, we don't deal with that at all. We deal with spiders that got bigger because we were doing experiments and they don't even talk. They don't even want revenge. They're just there because it's an accident. And to me, that's a wasted story opportunity. So, Series 11 had all kinds of little things like that. So, but I like Jodie's characterization of the Doctor. I thought that was really cool. So I kept watching because one of the things I want to point out about Doctor Who is if you don't like a doctor or a showrunner, wait because there'll be another one. The whole point of Doctor Who is it's always different. It's always changing. So that brings us to this special. Series 12 was a lot better. A lot better. You know, more two-parters, which, see, having grown up on classic Doctor Who, the reason it lasted so long is that a story would be 4 weeks long of 25 minutes each. Okay? And they would have a cliffhanger at the end of every episode of what's going to happen now. And, so that's how it kept going. So I'm used to multiple part stories. I really missed that in Doctor Who. I like 2 and 3 parters. Okay? And I enjoyed those things. So Series 12 had a lot more of that. I thought, for the most part, they told better stories. But Series 13, which is also called Flux, showed the most promise. Okay, because what they said was it's going to be 10 episodes. They're all going to be connected. I thought, great, this is classic Doctor Who. We'll get several stories all connected. It'll be awesome. And the premise was cool. The premise was really neat. But to hear Chris Chibnall admit that he didn't have a plan for what the Doctor found out is just ridiculous, right? And that's just silly. If you are a showrunner, go in with a freaking plan. That's all I ask. I don't have to agree with the plan. Just go in with a plan and make it a satisfying conclusion. Which is why that brings me to the review of The Power of the Doctor. Okay? Because this was not only Jodie's swan song as the Doctor, okay, but it was the 100th anniversary special for the BBC. So it celebrated the history of Doctor Who. And boy, did they pull out all the stops. Okay, David Bradley came back as the first Doctor. Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, and Paul McGann came back as their respective doctors. Now, granted, they were mostly visions that Jodie's doctor was having to encourage her to not give up and to regenerate, but the fact that Sylvester McCoy appeared to Sophie Aldred's character of Ace in costume as the Doctor, with Peter Davison appearing in costume to Janet Fielding's Tegan, who now works for UNIT. Oh my gosh, I love that. And the fact that Ian Chesterton was in it. Ian Chesterton. Okay. William Russell is 90 something years old, still doing appearances in Doctor Who, because when he was the companion, he played Ian Chesterton in the first, I'd say, 2 seasons of Doctor Who. Okay? When he was the companion, he loved Bill Hartnell. He loved working with Bill Hartnell. Okay? And he wanted Bill to get more credit than he got at the time for originating a role that, if it had not been successful, we would not be here today whining about how, oh, this isn't my Doctor Who because blah blah. You can have those conversations. It's fine. That's what Doctor Who is about. Everyone has had those conversations. Believe it or not, we were having those conversations in the 80s when Colin Baker took over from Peter Davison, and Colin Baker's Doctor was angry and kind of bickered with his companion, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, this isn't Doctor Who. What's going on?" People have been complaining about this show since I don't know when, and it is our right to do that. It's okay that we do that. It's important. But I just want us all to know our history and kind of appreciate the fact that there's so many elements to this particular story. And the fact that at the end, David Tennant appears as the new Doctor, and we don't know what's going on there, that's going to be cool. That's to give time. That's, you know what that's for? That is not just to recapture the glory days. That's to give Trudy Gottwald time to finish his other projects before his series of Doctor Who in 2023. Okay, so we're getting a couple specials before, you know, we get a new series, which is wonderful. I think that's awesome. I'm excited. I love David Tennant. To me, David Tennant is the Tom Baker of the modern series. Okay, he's the now. Some people say his Doctor's overrated, and I know why. Because everyone talks about how wonderful David Tennant is, and I get it. I really do. But he, after Christopher Eccleston left Doctor Who after one series, if David Tennant had not been successful, we wouldn't be whining about Jodie Whittaker, I can tell you that, okay? So, whoever your favorite showrunner is, that's all fine and good, but just know that David Tennant kind of secured Doctor Who as the phenomenon that it became. And I love Matt Smith, and I would have been happy if Matt Smith had shown up. And maybe he will. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. There's been a slippage in time, and we're going to find out why it's going on and what's happening. So, stay tuned. but it's good to see more stories with the 10th Doctor. Maybe we'll get the 11th. Maybe we'll get the 12th. We don't know. I'm excited. Um, I am looking forward to Jodie Whittaker's Doctor on Big Finish. Okay, for those that don't know, Big Finish Productions is an audio production company. They make Doctor Who audio starring the original Doctors. Okay, the original Doctors like Tom Baker, Peter Davison, Sylvester McCoy, Colin Baker, Paul McGann, and now uh, Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant as well. Okay, so I'm looking forward to Jodie's Doctor with some people who really can write truly brain twisting stories where you're not constrained by COVID and you don't have to make big sets and you don't have to worry about shooting schedules. You can just imagine a script and put it on audio. I am so looking forward to that. I think she's going to be brilliant as the Doctor, and I can't wait to see what they do. Okay, now, I'm sure I'll get comments that say, "Well, she's not my Doctor." That's great. I don't care. That's fine. I mean, you know, I have doctors that I was like, I don't, whatever. But and I originally thought that Peter Capaldi was going to be one of those because I was like, if they had kept going with Series 8 the way it was going, where he not know whether he was a good person and not know whether he wanted to save people or not, I might have stopped watching. I was really, really not happy with that. But things change, and if you like that characterization, um, William Hartnell did it first. That's what I'm going to say. William Hartnell did it first. Colin Baker did that in the 80s. And you have that first season of Peter Capaldi to watch. So you got plenty of Doctor Who to suit your taste if you like that sort of thing. It wasn't that he was angry with Clara. Being angry is fine. But even Colin Baker knew that he was the Doctor and knew that his job was to rescue people. He knew when something was wrong, he was driven to put it right. I mean, that's why his Big Finish stuff. Colin Baker did not get good innings on television. He did not have the best writing always. Did not have the best production schedules, and the hiatus didn't really help his character because the idea was that he would start out kind of rough and, and combative and mellow over time, like the first Doctor. Okay? And he only got 2 series on television because there was a big gap in production. So we never got all of Colin Baker's Doctor. And I really am so glad that he has had Big Finish stories to really make that good. I'm really happy about that. And I think in the same way, Jodie Whittaker is going to be awesome on Big Finish, and I can't wait. And I hope that when she gives birth to the baby and and had some time, a little time off, that they get it with some good stories and really get it going. And if you haven't checked out Big Finish, just know there's more to Doctor Who than you know about. And, you know, be excited to look into that because when there hasn't been enough Doctor Who on television because of the pandemic and because of gaps in the schedule, guess what I've been doing? Listening to Big Finish. I love radio. I collect old time radio shows. And so to me, the sets in Big Finish Productions are amazing because they're all in my head and they're so intricate. And Jodie Whittaker, where they don't have to just be simple stories because that's so one of the reasons that her era was the way it was because people complained that Stephen Moffat's stories were too complicated. And I will admit, even as a longtime fan, that sometimes they were. If you missed episode 6, let's say, then you couldn't understand something that happened in episode 12 because you had to watch episode 6. And that's hard. That's tough, you know. People just don't watch TV like that now. So it's tough to do that. And so one of the things that people ask was can we have simple stories? When we gave them simple stories, like Rosa and Arachnids in the UK, people said, well, this is too simple. I want it more complicated than this. So Big Finish really is your middle ground, you know, because of the pandemic and because of uh, the problems of our writing staff and people not being available and all these things, you know, we really couldn't get those complicated stories on television. I think the specials did a pretty good job of being more traditional Doctor Who, but I think by the time they came around, people had already decided how Jodie's Doctor was, and so maybe they weren't watching. I don't know, but I do think that Big Finish will be a good thing for her. So my advice is, if you weren't wild about the 13th Doctor on television, you know, the 14th Doctor is coming after we sort out this time mess that happened with the 10th. So that's gonna be okay. It's just a couple of specials, and then we're gonna move forward. Okay. Um, so you know, Trudy Gut was gonna be amazing. It's gonna be cool. Um, David Tennant does Big Finish, so if you like David Tennant, you're gonna get a little bit on television, and then we can go back to Big Finish because there is amazing stuff. And Doctor Who is more than you know, and I just hope that this helps. I hope that you guys don't mind the history lesson, and I hope that this gets positive reaction. I would just ask everyone to be kind to each other in the comments. And yeah, thank you.